The NASDAQ down about 200 going. 73,000 jobs. 73,000 jobs created in the month of July. Number just coming out.
And that's total.
Steve Moore, your reaction.
Look, I think this is all a result, this disappointing number is a result of all the turmoil over tariffs and the trade wars.
Oh, that's gonna hurt! I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election. And there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her.
Yeah, the excuses were immediate as a Fox Business panel was left absolutely dumbfounded after a, quote, disappointing US jobs report for July. Panelists were almost too stunned to speak as they digested the lower than expected figure of 73,000 jobs added in July, with one panelist even saying, and that's total?
Well, I'm just stunned at another number in this report, and that is the downward revision to the June figure from 147,000 to just 14,000. So looking over the last 3 months, we've got 73,000 in July, 14,000 in June, and 19,000 in May. Those are incredibly weak headline numbers, and that's the total, not just private jobs. So this is a very soft report.
This came minutes before host Maria Bartiromo announced it was expected that 110,000 jobs would be added to the US economy in July, and then was forced to reconcile with the shortfall as producers were undoubtedly yelling in her ear to cut to commercial. And what followed were excuses, everything from it's Jerome Powell's fault.
Hello, folks, welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. A lot of breaking news right now. First of all, is this Jay Powell's recession? A dreadful jobs report sent markets crashing. The president just fired Joe Biden's BLS commissioner. And in breaking news, Federal Reserve Governor Adriana Kugler has resigned. We're waiting for Jay Powell to do likewise. Frankly, Mr. Trump now has an opportunity to appoint his own Fed governor, who he could name as chairman. And my guess is at least one other member of the Fed is going to resign as well. So
also, there were some harsh truths shared as a former Trump economic advisor appeared on Fox and pointed to what has really caused this, Trump's tumultuous tariff policy.
I disagree with Charles. I think the main reason we saw weakness in those numbers in March, April, and May was because of the trade turmoil. I talked to small businesses all over the country. A lot of their factories came to a standstill. They didn't know if they could get their parts in. They didn't know what was going on. You know, there was threats of 50% tariffs and so on. There was a lot of turmoil.
Marcus, first off, your take on those numbers.
Well, I think I'm a little concerned. If you look at the revisions that happened in the last jobs report, that number came crashing down. So is 73,000 really 7,000?
Today's report is really going to shed more light that this was a very weak report. The revisions, certainly to May and June, are very concerning. I'm surprised unemployment is just at 4.2%. I know that, they're looking at that number, but they need to look at the whole picture. We do see a softening market. Now, there are jobs out there. I know you did ask me about that. There's still opportunities, like some of the hottest jobs, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, data scientists, analyst roles. But these are really skilled, high-level positions. These are the top occupations that are growing, and we need to get more people into these fields. They pay six figures, but a lot of those entry-level positions, Maria, are going away. So I am concerned about the labor market, that we need to get more people in trades and in skilled roles, because that's where the jobs are.
Well, for sure. And I think, to discuss the healthcare, the marriage of healthcare and technology is huge, and that is creating lots of jobs.
But if there's one thing we know about our current president, he handles things like this well, right? No, he fired someone almost immediately and going full authoritarian to claim that the job numbers are now rigged. Classic, right?
Here's the thing. Your supporters have had issues with these numbers. I've had issues with the numbers for a long time. But we're doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election. And there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her. Right. And you know what? I did the right thing. Any government official.
Point, and we should tell our viewers, we just got word from our producers that the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics has officially been fired now. David, what kind of precedent does this set? I mean, he's not, to be clear, he's not provided any actual evidence here.
Yeah.
Well, and that is nothing new for Donald Trump, right? I mean, so this is behavior we've seen before, and it feeds into this whole notion, of the deep state and the concern that government officials are working against him. He accused this woman and this agency of cooking the books last year in the campaign to benefit Kamala Harris. Again, without evidence, totally without evidence. And so I take the point that, yes, this is a human being, and Donald Trump is not a stranger to being impervious to that, as he seems to be here. But
if any government official going forward is presenting data or information you don't like, should they fear for their job?
I've always had a problem with these numbers. I was thinking about it this morning. Before the numbers that came out, I said, who is the person that does these numbers? And then they gave me stats about before the election. I had a similar problem. I mean, she gave out numbers that were so good for the Democrats. It was like unbelievable. And then right after the election, she corrected those numbers with, I think, almost 900,000 corrections. I think nobody had ever seen anything like it. Well, today she did the same thing with the 253,000, whatever the number was. No. We need people that we can trust. I mean, your question is a very good one. We need people we can trust.
Trump fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics on Friday after the jobs report showed the major slowdown of hiring in recent months. And this is someone, by the way, who's served in the federal government for 20 years, including positions at the U.S. Census Bureau, the Executive Office of the President, and the Department of Treasury. But because the man-child-in-chief just couldn't handle the fact that his train wreck on-again, off-again tariff policy has brought the economy to a halt, he's decided to blame someone else and ruin their career.
That was weaker than expected. But the real news is there were all these massive downward revisions for both May and June. May, originally, the government said the economy added 144,000. Now, 19,000. That is a major revision. This is the biggest revisions we've seen since COVID. June was originally at 147. Now it's just at 14,000. You can see it on that bar chart there. June was the worst since December of 2020. I just talked to Joe Brusuelas. He's the chief economist over at RSM, and he said, this report that we just got, when you look at the July numbers and the revisions, he says this is the worst major economic report we've gotten since the end of the pandemic era.
I mean, this is where we're at, right? We have a president who just refuses to accept the numbers and then fire people because he doesn't like said numbers.
Boris, look, the job market, it's been so resilient for so long, but all of a sudden it looks like it's stalling out. That is a big deal, and that is concerning investors on Wall Street. Let me run you through some of the key numbers here. We learned today that the U.S. economy added 73,000 jobs in July. Now, that was weaker than expected. The unemployment rate went up from 4.1 to 4.2%. That's still pretty low, but it's moving in the wrong direction. But what's really alarmed economists is the fact that during the months of May and June, the U.S. economy added almost no jobs at all. As you mentioned, there were these massive downward revisions showing that the economy added about 250,000 fewer jobs than we previously knew. In fact, when you look here at the 3-month average, economists like to take an average to smooth out some of the volatility. Well, this is the weakest 3-month stretch since June of 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, when we look at some of the sectors here, the good news is healthcare, social assistance continues to add jobs, 73,000. I think the bad news is that really accounts for the most, if not all, of the jobs added last month. We saw a slowdown in leisure and hospitality and job loss in information, manufacturing, and professional services. I think the bottom line here is the job market is suddenly flashing yellow lights.
And if someone hasn't pulled the alarm yet, what are we doing? How can we now trust any job numbers in the future? He just wants to instill an alternate facts reality as a part of everyday life. It's raining. Is it though?
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.